Hello and welcome to Celebrating Cinema, a podcast for the love of cinema. I'm your host, Laura Gomans, and today on this episode, producer Elliot Bloom is chatting to our co-host Kiriko Mechanicus about her award-winning short film, How to Catch a Butterfly. She took the movie to South by Southwest and won several prizes at European film festivals. Long before social media and the internet, filmmakers had been doing something radical, turning the camera on themselves. Not to perform, but to try and understand a life. Kiriko's own short film is an autobiographical exploration of how racial fetishes have shaped her relationships and sexual experience as a Dutch-Japanese woman. Together, Elliot and Kiriko explore why we keep personal archives and what they can teach us about ourselves. And also, how has that changed in living in the most self-documented time in history? They discuss some classics including Tarnation, Minding the Gap, and A Family Affair. Before we start, you can support us by leaving a review. It really helps other cinema lovers find us. And don't forget to send us your most controversial film hot take or confession. We read one out at the end of every episode. Also, there's a lot of fun stuff happening at Lab 111 in Amsterdam, including the 25th anniversary screening of Legally Blonde starting from May 28th, and a screening of the Japanese classic Moving with a steamy bowl of ramen on May 31st.
Sir Elliot, how are you?
I'm good, Kiriko. How are you?
I'm good.
I think you have a lot to tell us because it's been a while since you've been on the podcast.
Have I? My. It has been a while for sure. I'm back.
What have you been up to?
I think the last time I spoke on this podcast was the beginning of this year. I have been all over the world.
Yes, you have.
Because I made a new film. It's been traveling and I've just been traveling along the film. I think it's really fun, but it's a little bit tiring also, but that was not a complaint. But I premiered in the US at South by Southwest Festival in Austin.
Which, if people don't know, is a pretty huge deal.
It's fucking massive. Yeah, and after that, I've been going to a lot of film festivals in Europe, which has been a lot of fun because I get to see a lot of new films.
Yeah.
Weird short docs and things like that.
How have people been receiving your film? I think you said in America especially, they really loved it.
It was really funny because in the US, I mean, it was obviously the first time that I had shown my film to an audience. And then people were so enthusiastic. They were like, wow, you did such an incredible job. My God, I've never been touched like this before. Like, you have to tell me all about it. I'm like, yeah, like, I guess I made something amazing. And then a few days in, I realized, oh, this is America.
Yeah.
People are just extremely enthusiastic about a lot of things. So yeah, that was kind of like the initial response. And then in Europe, it's been really nice because I think overall the response has been really positive, but also I've had a lot of nice critical discussions about the film, which is, one of the main reasons why I made it.
I mean, we'll talk about the film in a sec, which is called How to Catch a Butterfly. Beautiful title. But maybe you can tell our audience a bit about how these festivals work, how you were able to get it made, like what happens after, because it's always kind of a bit of mystery how people go from making to, let's say, a feature film, or you also studied at the Film Academy, how you go from, graduating to then people seeing your films or making some kind of career, hopefully, out of it.
Yeah. Well, I would say that there's quite a lot of gatekeeping within the industry that, if you are a filmmaker, and I'm realizing now that it's important that you win prizes because winning a prize allows you to then like have a bigger reach and other festivals noticing you. And then obviously there's like so many films that are being made every year. And then sadly, I guess there's people in the industry who only like look at the winners or like look at where people have previously been selected. On the other way around, there's also like this big competition on premieres, so that, now that I've had a US premieres, it means that a lot of festivals in the US won't show the film anymore. So there's like all these, complicated mathematical rules that I don't understand. But luckily I work with a producer who does. So she kind of figures it out for me, which I'm very grateful for. Yeah, but then also like most of the filmmakers that I met in the US are all people who fund their own film, they produce their own film, they submit the film to all the festivals with their own money, you know, people who live to make film and, you know that by no means will they be able to make money off of it, but they still do it. I thought that was, I don't know, painful and somewhere also beautiful to watch because you feel that the passion is so real.
In America, especially, I don't know how there's just not the same funding.
There is
there
no
for film.
funding.
Yeah.
There's no funding unless, you know, you can make a deal with like A24 or Netflix. But even then, you have to first make the film oftentimes before then A24 decides to distribute it with you. But also, this is not a conversation that happens for short films because we're not in that league.
So far, you've won 2 awards.
I have.
In Lisbon and Warsaw.
Yep.
And hopefully now that gives you the credibility and also the confidence of funds and producers to back you in the next with the next project. Is that kind of how it works?
Yeah, I mean,
make one to make the next one, kind of.
Kind of. But I think for documentary, it's also quite different than fiction. And then I'm lucky so I have a really nice relationship with my producer. Our process of working together was so nice that even like before all of this circus had happened, we kind of already like talked about making a new film together. And then in the Netherlands, there is a system of funding. It doesn't mean that you will get it, but you can apply for money and potentially get it. So that makes life so much easier already. So in that sense, yeah, to be in the Netherlands is, I guess, for this industry, quite a privilege. As for now, because things are going down.
Let's talk about How to Catch a Butterfly.
Let's do it.
You tell us a little bit about it, and then we'll also play a clip from the short film. But what is this film about, and how does it relate to what we're going to be talking about?
Okay, so How to Catch a Butterfly is a short film, and it departs from an incident that has happened 5 years ago in 2021. In the US, in Atlanta, there was a 21-year-old boy called Robert Aaron Long, and he had kind of gone on a killing spree where he murdered 8 people, of which 6 are East Asian women. Yeah, it was a shooting incident, as we have many in the US. And his motivation to do this was from a severe porn addiction that he had. I remember seeing this on the news and it really stuck with me. And I kind of started relating this incident to my own life, specifically my own love and sex life. And for those of you who are hearing this and not seeing this, I'm half Asian. And in my life, I've had quite a lot of experience with people with yellow fever. So that is people who have an ethnic fetish for East Asian women. And I kind of wanted to discover what this fetish was, where it came from. And I think especially the undertone of aggression that I felt was always there and somehow became very apparent to me from this incident. Here's a clip.
Are you coming here or you just wanted to see yourself like this?
Yeah, I thought this was nice.
Mm-hmm. We know that there's a stereotype of Asian women.
Cute, undemanding,
I cannot perform Japanese women anymore.
and obeying to your wishes.
I lost it.
It's an essayistic film, I would say. This personal narrative or personal history of mine alongside me trying to get in touch with Robert, and all kind of snippets of yellow fever from its history to how it manifests today on the internet sort of blend together in one story.
I mean, I watched it finally only recently, and I told you, it's a very beautiful film. I think, like I told you about your last film as well, A Tomato Tragedy, is that I really love it when filmmakers are able to put their own personality quite clearly into the film itself.
Yeah, but again, I said this to you when you said this too, again. Because we are friends and therefore you know my personality. So you see how it comes through in the film. But then I think this would be the case for literally any person who would make a film. Like your personality would come through.
Yes, but I think you still have to have like a certain quirky personality for it to really come through, because I think
You can also be very serious and have your personality come
but then
through.
that can get lost in like it being a serious film. Like,
Right.
come on, if you look at a Christopher Nolan film, I don't really see much personality in those films other than like,
I agree.
But I think more the sense that the film itself, when you can see someone's own style or personality in it, it really then feels much more colourful in the sense that it's not a straightforward film. It doesn't take you from A to B. It goes all over the place. And I think, again, you do that.
You're very chaotic, so yeah.
But I mean, also like Agnes Varda is quite clearly a big influence in yours, but if you see your films, but if you see in her films also, she is very kooky in what she does. And I think it only makes her films better for doing that, because you feel, especially in documentary, like the documentaries can get very serious very quickly. Because they take the topic matter way too seriously or way too objectively, let's say. But I think the moment that you add a certain subject and here you put yourself in it, I can imagine why you made it about yourself from the start. With the opening, you have this webcam kind of performance, and I think immediately that way you bring the audience in to see it through your eyes immediately, rather than to be like, I saw this thing on the news. How does that relate to this topic of yellow fever?
Yeah.
Like, it sounds obvious and like something any good filmmakers should do, but I still think there's a talent being able to take someone's hand and lead them in a way where they feel safe enough to explore a topic that may not be known to them or familiar to them, and then be able to,
Well, yeah, I mean, in this case, it was kind of like, it would have felt weird to not include myself within the film because it's so much about how I experienced life. But to be fair, when I started making out the film, it was not my plan at all to make it about me. I kind of knew like, oh yeah, in some way my voice will be there, but I had initially interviewed like a lot of women, Asian women friends and friends of my mom. And I thought that like they would kind of be the protagonists of the film, until I realized like, oh, but everybody feels completely different about this.
Yeah.
I'm never going to be able to like concise this in a short film. Maybe it should just be me.
Also, what I said to you is like, you're very vulnerable in the film itself, and probably more vulnerable than I know you in person. How did you feel about doing that and being so vulnerable in it? And again, like you said, obviously, you know, you're going to make yourself kind of the subject in it, but to be that vulnerable is not something everybody would choose to do.
No, I wouldn't say it's a fun thing to do either. But I think it's funny because the process of making the film, the production side of it up until post-production and like editing and stuff, it felt like it was a very solitary process and I didn't really tell a lot of people that I was making a film. I wasn't actually really talking about it at all. And it was just mostly me, because I did the camera work and the sound recording also. So it was literally just me like going around and mostly journaling a lot. So I write letters to this killer, and it's just, it felt very much as if I was like, I don't know, writing a book or something, just like extremely solitary. And I realized like, oh, this is, I think, the only way to go about this. I just need to write things down and film without the idea that I'm making a film. So I went into like all these rabbit holes like on the internet and in my own mind, and I kind of gathered all this material without having any plan. I had not written a plan for the film either, and kind of figure out then in post how this could turn into a story. So the whole production process was like very solitary, and I wasn't aware of I knew that if I would think about what people would like think about what I was doing, I would not be able to make it. So I completely sort of let go of the idea that I was making a film. And then in post-production, I worked together with a team, with a sound designer and with an editor, and my producer got involved. I think that is the moment that I tried to completely detach myself from the narrative that I was creating, because I knew if I'm going to like identify with the character that's in the film, I'm not going to be able to make the film because I'm going to be like too confused about it in a way. So I really tried to sort of see it as part of something larger. And I think that was important for me because, of course, I tell the story from my perspective, but the story that I'm essentially trying to tell is not about me, but more about a problem that we have in the world. So I knew like, oh, of course, my perspective is the way to sort of seduce people into the story. But once I start like feeling ashamed or anything about the things that I say, I'm not going to be able to tell it in a way that has an effect.
It felt in the film also that it's obvious, but that it was for you a journey of self-discovery, in the sense that, like you said, you were talking about how this killing spree led you to reflect on your own relationships and like sexual experiences, but it also felt that for you it was more a reflection and only then a discovery of the fact that your relationships have been formed in some way through the lens of this yellow fever fetishization.
Yeah.
How was that to come to terms with and to then be able to understand it through this way, rather than maybe in the sense that you looked back and thought, oh, I had a series of, and this is only because I know you, but sort of unhealthy relationships?
Mm-hmm. I think what's nice about like making a film or like making a personal film is that you really allow yourself to give some time to think about something that you actually don't want to think about. Because I think like throughout my life, I think I made many unhealthy decisions for a very long time. And I then sort of went into a phase of my life where I tried to completely avoid the subject and like be sort of manifest, you know, the complete opposite of this fantasy that was projected on me or whatever. And I think, well, I guess it's also part of like becoming an adult. I really allowed myself to like think about, okay, but so all these formative years of, you know, being a teenager and being in your early 20s, what has it done to who I am today, and to like, I don't know, spend chunks of your day thinking about that? It's really not fun, I would say, because I think for most people being a teenager was pretty miserable, because like we all kind of threw our self-worth in the bin, because that's kind of what you do as a teenager. But then the effect of it is like it manifests in various ways, no, as an adult. Yeah, it was not fun, but very healthy. It's, yeah, I really enjoy the process now of realizing that all these mistakes that you make as a child or as a teen are something that you can just talk about with people, strangers, you know, like weird things that we do in our sex life or mistakes that we make, something that you can just talk about, and that's kind of cool in a way. I think like that's the funnest part of all this like festival screenings and stuff, is that I have like these really strange conversations with people about their personal and like sex life, and it's really exciting.
Before we move on to the like larger topic, the one last question I'd like to ask is, now that you've made this film, are you happy that, what's his name, Robert Long? Yeah. This killer that you send letters to, are you happy that he then never responded?
Not really. I really wanted him to respond.
Yeah?
Yeah, I mean, he's a killer and he did something awful, but in a way, I also understand that he is a kid and that he grew up in very different circumstances than me. I think if he would have grown up in my shoes, I don't think he would have ever done what he did, because he grew up as a young man in America in like some weird suburb, very strict parents, and he was kicked out of his house for having a porn addiction, which I don't know, I find so sad. He is a human, so there's some sense of humanity in who he is, and I was really trying to find that, or like, I don't know, speak to that side of him. I would have loved to really talk with him, but it didn't happen, sadly.
So we've spoken obviously about your film and how it's autobiographical, but I think as we were discussing about how we could talk about your film in relation to perhaps a bigger topic within cinema, it led us quite nicely onto this idea of, why do we film ourselves? Why do directors want to make films about themselves and put themselves as the characters within their own films, but also the ego that is perhaps involved in all of this. Obviously, we have some films that we want to touch on that kind of highlight all of this, but maybe first a bit about what your initial thoughts are of why we film ourselves.
Yeah, it's funny because autobiographical films in the Netherlands are called ego documentaries, ego documentaires.
Really?
Yeah, that's just the name for them, which I find so funny. It is interesting because many of the films, especially when an autobiographical film is bad, you can just like see the ego seeping through, and there's, I don't know, something so awkward about being a witness of that. But I remember when I was in film school is I think the first time that I saw a few autobiographical films, and they can be so touching and so moving, and they go, if it's, yeah, some of these films, they go way beyond this being a witness of someone's personal misery, and they really speak about the world in a way that can be beautiful. And I think especially when an autobiographical film is good, you can tell that the director goes beyond their own ego and kind of, you know, shows the destruction of their own life. And then, you know, you go beyond this idea of looking at an individual who likes to look at themselves, but you see an individual who maybe hates to look at themselves, but then allows you to be a witness of that.
Or this sense that they have perhaps gone through some kind of personal trauma or misery, like you say, and they weren't able to spot it or deal with it at the time in a way they wish they'd hoped. And so therefore, by sharing it with other people, it gives them the language or some kind of deeper understanding for them to perhaps not repeat the same mistakes of the filmmaker.
Sure. Documentary is a complicated field now, because the moment that you put a camera on someone and you, I mean, essentially what you do is like a director asks a character, talk to me about your trauma. That's kind of what always happens. Oftentimes that's very problematic because, you know, we are a witness, supposedly it's like a healing process for this character, but what the fuck does he know? And like most of the times these people don't even ask for this. Like they don't want to be a main character in a film. So I don't know. Of course, there's like there's a lot of ethical questions about documentary filmmaking. That's not what this episode is about. But the beautiful thing about autobiographical documentaries is that a film is oftentimes immediately personal, because a director gives himself or herself or themselves the permission to be vulnerable in front of the camera. You get oftentimes to a closer reality in autobiographical films compared to just like normal narrative documentaries, because it's just very complicated to win someone's trust in interactions. Did I explain myself correctly?
Yeah, definitely.
Sure. Okay.
I think we'll obviously also come on to how it relates to social media, but I think what you're touching on is the kind of vlog aspect of these autobiographical documentaries makes you immediately feel like you're in a safer environment because you're in, let's say, a closer proximity to who's making it or who's recording it. So then you're more aware of the subjectivity of it rather than someone trying to pretend there's an objective lens through which you're trying to watch this.
Yeah.
Maybe we could talk about a couple of the films that we've watched for it.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, let's talk about Tarnation by Jonathan Caouette.
Yes.
I think this is probably as personal and as vulnerable as someone could be on camera in terms of a documentary film. Do you want to tell us a little bit about this film?
Yes. Tarnation is a film from the early 2000s, I believe. It speaks about the life of Jonathan, and he kind of delves into his personal family history, specifically the life of his mother. And he tries to sort of figure out, based on like this archival material that he has, what her life was like before he was born, and also what the life was like of his grandparents. And then slowly you start to discover more and more about his life. And then because it was the early 2000s, there's like a lot of material from handycams, from his own childhood, where you see him sort of fall in love with avant-garde cinema and him being this club kid and like discovering himself into his queerness. And then this child becoming an adult, you see how it gets influenced by the problems of his mother. And you kind of get to understand how severe the issues that his mom are, and she is, I think, bipolar. But then also you start to doubt this fact because you get to understand that his grandparents are also quite problematic and abusive people. It's this account of this family history and his own history, but it's very much an iMovie movie. And I think to those of you who don't know what iMovie is, like in the early days of Apple, you had this free app on Apple computers where you could edit films. And it has like these weird effects and kind of like very home video avant-garde darkness to it that is, I don't know, I would say quite a rough, intense watch. And it enhances but also makes all this drama in this film a bit funkier, and like, yeah, it's like as art housey as it gets in a way. Yeah. Here's a clip.
Are you so angry with me?
The questions you asked me and all of that, there's nothing the matter with me. You're trying to scheme something on me.
I'm not trying to scheme anything
just
on
leave
you.
me alone and you tend to your business.
Yeah, what did you think of this film?
It was incredibly intense, also partly because of the style and form of the film itself. But it's so, firstly, impressive how he turns this personal archive into like this quite clear art piece through the editing styles of like just layering so many different self-recorded videos and photographs and all this stuff. And it really spoke to me of turning something quite clearly painful into something beautiful, and you experiencing that process of him doing that in like real time. For the film itself, it's also just terribly heartbreaking, the story that they go through, both him and his mum, because there's also a time where they run away together, and yeah, they experience quite some traumatic things. And then he also has never met his father, and he gets to meet his father for the first time on camera with his mum present in the room. These kinds of films I don't watch often, so I was very happy that you pointed me in this direction, and I think it does really speak to something again of this vlogging thing of like, I was surprised of how like now in today in social media and stuff, we feel that whenever someone turns a camera on, especially with their phone, it's performative, that their personality changes in some way because they know they're being recorded. Whereas here it felt like the camera was their like secret cave or something, that they were able to be their true selves.
Yeah, for sure.
Because he's also gay as well, and you see his use of archival footage coming to terms also with his own like sexual identity. And it was really just sweet how like you see these moments of when he's like 14 or something, and he comes across very camp, but he's just super comfortable in himself, and that's juxtaposed between all the sort of like fighting and shouting and like the more traumatic elements that
that's I think what has stuck with me the most as well, that you can really tell that him resorting to films, watching them, making them is really his only way out, and it's kind of like what he holds on to as a form of survival. There's one part in the film that I think is so cute where I think he has like his school play, like end of year school play, where he directs Blue Velvet by David Lynch, and it's like this bunch of kids like
and it's
acting.
a musical as well, right?
It's a musical, and it's just, I don't know, I thought it was so cute, and it just like showed me like how quirky and absurd this kid is, but also like how much he loves his craft and how much he sort of he's attracted to this darkness that cinema can express, and how he tries to sort of do the same thing but with no means, because he literally only has that camera and nothing else. You can see how art is survival.
And I think that connects also really nicely to Minding the Gap by Bing Liu. And this is again, another documentary of a friend who uses sort of skateboarding, that is sort of the shared passion between a small group of friends in a very suburban place called Rockford in Illinois in America. And it's kind of like this ghost town where there's no real job opportunities or anything. And through skateboarding, they're able to sort of start to talk about the more deeper sides to themselves and unpack some of the trauma that they all share and their own struggles that they're going through, and how yet even though they share this sport of skateboarding and how for them they say it kind of saved them in a way, or it was like their happy place to go to escape things that were happening at home, that unfortunately as you get older that tends to break away, or you can't hold on to that as much as possible. First I want to play a clip and then we can chat about it.
Take one.
I'm making this film because I saw myself in your story.
I always felt like I didn't fit in with my family.
My parents ran this very controlling house. I ran away a lot.
Skateboarding is more of a family than my family.
What did you think watching this film?
Well, it was quite some time ago that I saw this film. I remember seeing it when it came out, I think maybe like 7 years ago or something.
Yeah, it came out in 2018.
Yeah. And it's kind of crazy that you go through someone's life for a very long time. They really start filming when they're kids, and then you see them becoming adults.
Yeah.
And what I love about it is that there is this perseverance in the act of skateboarding, of like the whole act of falling and then getting up on your skateboard again. Is like, it's almost like this philosophical way to go about life that I think is so embedded in how skater boys are. Like there's this very, they have like very specific form of nonchalance that you can see it come to fruition in this film, and it bonds them, and this philosophy, you really understand what it is. But then it is also very much a testament of masculinity, because, it's just boys being boys. And of course, boys amongst other boys are not necessarily the most vulnerable. But then you can tell that this camera is, again, a vehicle that is used to sort of unleash hidden feelings or stories between these characters. And you feel it lingering throughout the film. And it's so special to be a witness of witnessing this lingering shame or pain for so many years of their lives. And then also the characters understanding that this camera becomes the means to be able to communicate with one another. I don't know, it's really like the best usage of a camera, I would say, ever.
As they grow more comfortable with their friend interviewing them with the camera, they start to want to share more and more, because they understand the process of which they're going through, or their ability to shed skin or shed layers.
And the director also, no? Yeah. Because the director initially, he's just there to like film them skating, as all skater boys do. Yeah. And then, I don't know, he just understands like, oh, this goes beyond that or something.
Yeah, I thought it was really cool how, like, because you said it, he first was just that one of their friends that filming them skateboarding, and often they would be these like skateboarding montage videos, and it's to show how cool or how good you are at skateboarding. And then he's able to repurpose this like footage of them when they're a lot younger and reflect more about how that was their like release of rage. There's like times where they're smashing up skateboards, and he's able to connect that to them of what they were experiencing at that time in their family home, because you hear them talking over it or talking before about what was actually really like to live there. And it was just so beautiful. And I think kind of also what you were saying of like this nonchalance of the skateboarding kind of lifestyle, you see it as both like they're saving the thing that saves them, but also their downfall, because they then also struggle to get jobs or to be real fathers and this kind of stuff. But I think in some way you like to think that the film helped them to discover all of that or become more aware of themselves. I just don't see how that film can work without it being someone from within, someone also willing, because he also interviews his mum and he puts the camera on himself. He's able to get his mum to talk about domestic violence and both what he suffered as a child, but also what his mum went through. And it's just probably such a vulnerable moment you could ever have on camera.
Because, I mean, if once a camera is put on you, there's this immediate awareness that a story becomes of everyone who is a witness to that story. I think anyone, even people who don't watch documentaries, feel this, no?
Yeah.
You feel sort of like the opportunity that lays within that moment. So, yeah, of course, people act differently when a camera is put on them, but it also releases like this sense of it's now or never. And yeah, that happens a lot within this film. I want to talk a bit about the film. I think the first autobiographical film that I've seen that sort of made me go into this, or like that made me see the value of them, which is a film. It's a Dutch film called A Family Affair.
Yeah.
And it's by this guy called Tom Fassaert. And this film came out, I think, the year before I went to Film Academy. And it was like the opening film of ITFA that year. It was like a super big hit. And it was, I think, the film that everybody was talking about when I started going to film school. Yeah, it is this very absurd story of Tom, the director, going to South Africa to visit his grandmother, who is a woman that he knows mostly based on stories from his family, from his father and his uncle. But he never really got to know her because it seems that everybody in his family kind of hates her. So, and she's like 94 years old. So he's like, actually now I think is the moment to sort of get to know her before she dies, because she's very old. And then he spends a couple of weeks with her, and he really starts to see again this family trauma unfold right in front of his eyes, because he starts to, you know, get to know her for who she is, but also make an attempt to sort of find forgiveness within their relationship. And he tries to really, like, I don't know, repair something that was broken. But then also you're face to face with a maniac. You really see, no, maniac is maybe not the right word, but
Narcissist.
A narcissist who has definitely been manipulative in her life. It is also so incredible to watch a narcissist on camera.
Yeah.
Because narcissism, I mean, it works in a very peculiar way, because it's someone who, yeah, loves themselves and thinks of themselves as right. And then,
they live in their own reality, right?
Absolutely.
But here you get to see both their reality and the actual reality.
Exactly. And then also the moment that you put a camera on a narcissist, you can sort of see this, I don't know, self-obsession flourish in a way that is also deceiving, and you kind of like get seduced by her charisma, because she's also like quite an incredible figure. It's a film that I would recommend a lot of people to watch, because it has this, it's very absurd also. A lot of absurd things happen in that film that you would never think that, they could be possible, but I guess they are.
How it's sort of structured the film is that you're sort of led along to believe the whole time that she's lived some kind of extraordinary life, not only being a mother of 2 children, but also being some kind of a famous model. And then they hint at there being more, but they never tell you more, because instead the story unravels more about how she also abandoned her children to live her own life in South Africa, and how she's sort of creating this whole narrative around herself, so much so that she falls in love with her grandson.
Yeah.
And is sort of getting very jealous and bitter of his actual girlfriend, and them having this whole interaction that sort of epitomizes the whole fantasy or reality that she lives in. And I think I can't imagine he was expecting that to happen.
No. But then to have sort of like the courage to witness that and to be subject of that and to keep the camera rolling is incredible.
And so much so, like, there's also, again, you see the consequences of the relationship with their mother on the 2 sons, and has sort of some kind of mental issues of some kind. I wouldn't know what, but the filmmaker has now made another documentary about the 2 brothers called Tussen Broers, which is out now.
Yeah, it just came out. I haven't seen it yet.
Well, the films we talked about so far speak a lot about personal grief and personal trauma, which is also very heavy. And I think it's also easy to forget that that's not the only reason that people make films about themselves or through themselves as the characters. And I think this is where Agnes Varda comes in.
The queen! Let's talk about her one more time.
Yeah. I can't remember if we've spoken about Gleaners and I, but I think maybe we did when we did the episode on Agnes Varda. But I think what I like about this is you get to instead see the world through her eyes rather than it being a particular personal story about her family or her own identity. For anybody that doesn't know, Gleaners and I is sort of this film of Agnes Varda following people around sort of French villages and small cities and how they sort of live off the scraps and the rubbish and the waste, whether that's food, materials, clothes, whatever. And she sort of comes across some of the most extraordinary people in that way. And you start to realize how she, as a filmmaker, is also gleaning or taking these sort of scraps and able to make something beautiful out of it. And I think it's one of those films that you wish people make more of, in a way, of being able to see how others see themselves or look at the world.
I mean, it's kind of vloggy.
Yeah, it's super vloggy.
It might be the first vlog that has ever been made. There's a very vloggy aspect to it because it's also just her roaming around. It feels as if she's just like, it's her day to day with like a little bit of a mission, but also not really, because it's like a really weird mission to be like, I'm going to find out who picks things off of the floor. You just said you wish more films would be like that, but the internet is filled with vlogs.
Yeah, which I think is what I want to come on to, of how do you think social media, sort of both Instagram, YouTube, this vlogging aspect, and the fact that we document ourselves has perhaps changed our relationship to these kind of styles of videos and films?
Well, do you watch vlogs?
I used to, but I think, yeah, there's so much more, like I was saying before, a sense of performativity in it that it never feels natural.
No, and I think...
At least not what I watch.
No. I think probably most vlogs are very bad, but I can imagine that there's also a lot of vlogs that are cinematic and of like, of higher value, telling us something beyond just the personal, but telling us something universal. And I do think that it is like kind of fun that anyone could make a film now. There were a lot of shots in my film that I made with my iPhone. It's not that big of a deal. It just kind of, it works, you know?
But on that, I was also telling you how after watching these films, it makes me want to document my life more.
Yeah.
Because I see sort of more the value of being able to have this own personal archive to go back to.
Yeah.
Because I'm someone that sort of tries to live a more analog life as much as I can. But you said something very nice of how, or something important of how, like, there's a difference when you have a phone an iPhone or a phone out videoing as opposed to a normal camera.
I think people understand when you film something with a camera that the intention is to either save a memory or a moment or to create something with it, because that is why we used to videotape or take photos. Whereas with a phone camera, you immediately also have the association that something can be documented, but for other reasons, for surveillance or for shame or for social media.
Yeah.
And it's not that you cannot post things that you made with a camera on social media, but it's much more this association of a gun being pointed at you that you have with an iPhone rather than with a camera. I think people know that oftentimes when you shoot with a camera, it is well intended. It's just the intuition that people have when they see one. But still, even if you have an iPhone, I think art can really be created, or vlog art is something that exists within the world. And there's just a difference with what you do with the material after you've shot it. If that is something that you can do with intention or with question that you just want to have an answer to or that you're looking for, then vlogs can be, I think, phenomenal. But they're yet to be made, I guess.
Would you want to go see a vlog in a cinema?
Someone posted on Letterboxd that they thought that my film was a bit like a YouTube video.
Really?
Yeah. So I guess
you've done that.
I've made it. Yeah.
I would like to see more filmmakers try
Mm.
to do that, because I guess we as cinema lovers perhaps maybe cringe at that idea or don't take vlogging as seriously anymore, or because of the consequences and the effects of social media and stuff. But I think that shouldn't be the case. There is quite clearly a value to that. There is quite clearly a history to that people who are very talented at what they do should want to try and maybe reinvent or recraft this kind of form or genre into something that we can gain more value from.
Yeah, and I find it kind of gatekeepy to be like, yeah, if you want to make a film, you need to have a proper camera and a crew and a plan and an idea. And like, I mean, sure, but also not really. Like, filmmaking is very, very expensive. And I don't think it always has to be.
No, I was going to say, I hope vloggers also have the ambition to turn their vlogs into cinema, because perhaps maybe they want to make a different jump to directing or something, but to also know that what they are creating, there is value in it, and because they have the means to do so of just themselves and the camera and these skills, that I think it's really cool to show people a blueprint for that, of how easy it can be sometimes to make a film about something.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, a lot of people, I think, are doing amazing things. I'm like,
yeah. If people have any suggestions of vloggers we should watch, please.
Please, let's dive deep into the internet.
So now on to our new segment, Hot Takes, where we listen to some of our audience's favorite hot takes of either films or opinions on cinema culture that they would like us to debate. And you can always send them in via voice memo or email to celebratingcinema@lab111.nl or on our Instagram. Today we have one about the musical biopic Michael, the film of Michael Jackson's life,
which we saw together.
We saw this together, and we are very happy to be able to speak about this biopic, Michael, because I think we also have a lot to say. But let's take a listen to Aika and her hot take.
I didn't go into the film thinking I was going to watch something akin to a documentary, or that it would show any investigation of complicated facts, or sort of show a full human being in all their sort of complicated weirdness. But it was like even more Disney than I anticipated, and even more sort of airbrushed. And maybe my hot take is that I was just so bored. Like, it was so boring. It was such a bad film. You know, I was hoping to enjoy the music, but actually the film made me uncomfortable for me to enjoy Michael's music and the music of the Jackson 5, because it showed I'm enjoying the music of a child that's been abused. You know, I don't feel comfortable listening to that as well, because it's like this child is 8 years old or 10 and is being bullied into performing, and he's a great performer, but like, why would we enjoy this setup? It's just so strange.
So, what do you think?
Well, I could thank you so much for your hot take. I mean, it is definitely a hot take, because a lot of people love this film, but also I think there's a lot of people who hate this film. So in that sense, you're not alone. To touch upon your first remark that you said that the film was a lot more Disney than you thought it was going to be, I fully agree with that. It was so sweet. Like, my teeth were aching. It was rough. Like, so the one cheesy choice was made after the other. And yeah, it was kind of hard to go through that. I agree. But then, Elliot, you said something very sharp about that Michael Jackson was also very much a cheesy person.
Yeah. I mean, so I think Tom also said this before when he spoke about Michael, but like, obviously we criticize musical biopics for just being full of cliches, but if there was ever one person that lived all those cliches, it probably is Michael Jackson.
Yeah.
Simply because he was a kid that never grew up, and so therefore you kind of see the whole time how his undeveloped childlike mind is acting or able to experience the world that he's in. It never feels real to him because he never got a chance to know anything different, I would say. I did appreciate Eike's take on the sense that more you're watching or you see firsthand, maybe for the first time even, of how it is some kind of child abuse that you're seeing, and of Michael himself, the fact that he is, as Eike says, bullied into performing, into all these things, of him wanting to just read stories or play with his toys, and he's never allowed to do that. Yeah, obviously it's so uncomfortable, but
it is true that there is like this big elephant in the room, because when you talk about Michael Jackson, you talk about the allegations and the pedophilia. So this film, spoiler alert, it doesn't really touch upon any of these allegations. However, it does show like all the hardship that he has gone through in his life. And weirdly enough, it does something weird in your mind where you're like, is this just like justifications for him having become a problematic man in his adult life? And, you know, even if the allegations are now part of this narrative, you fold them into like his child, and you're like, oh, he was abused, so therefore he may have abused other kids. Like it kind of does this weird thing that the more you don't talk about it, the more it becomes part of the story.
Yeah.
One thing that I loved about it so much is that you realize that his artistry is very much coming from him, because he makes these absurd choices in his sense of fashion. Like he looks nuts most of the time. And then the way he moves and like the music videos that he directs, you can really tell that there is an artist at work, and really one of the first pop artists who want to make his craft all encompassing. And I feel like because there's such a lack of those kind of pop stars now, where, you know, there is, I would say maybe no pop star this day and age who doesn't feel manufactured, or where you don't feel like this whole team behind them who are kind of controlling their image or whatnot. And that's, I don't know, it really made me appreciate his artistry on a new level. So yeah, I feel your hot take, and partially I'm defending him as an artist a little bit.
That's it for this episode about why we love to film ourselves. Thank you for listening. If this episode made you dig out your old phone and look at footage you haven't watched in years, I guess we did something right. Subscribe wherever you listen, leave a review if you have 2 minutes, it really helps us. And keep sending us your film hot takes and confessions on Instagram via voice message, or to celebratingcinema@lab111.nl. Join us next week when Elliot and I will dive into the back rooms, because the YouTube viral spooky series was turned into a feature for A24 by 20-year-old director Kane Parsons. See you next week. Stay connected with us at Celebrating Cinema and Lab by following @Lab111 on Instagram and Letterboxd. This was a Lab 111 production, edited and produced by Elliot Bloom, and co-produced by myself, Laura Gomans. Music comes from Hugo Emmertsal, and the artwork is by Studio FFF.